They are not going to tell you this. Not the people who disrespected you. Not the culture that handed you a broken manual on how to respond. Not the voices that told you to speak up, stand your ground, and make sure everyone in the room knows you will not be treated that way. None of them will tell you the single most important truth about disrespect, because this truth does not flatter anyone, and it requires you to accept something about yourself that is far more uncomfortable than anything someone else has ever said to you. The disrespect was not the problem. You were. Not your character, not your worth, not the validity of the anger you felt when it happened. You were operating without the one quality that makes a man psychologically untouchable. And because that quality was absent, the people around you made a calculation. A cold, instinctive, entirely accurate calculation they did not arrive at consciously. They simply felt it, the way a predator feels the difference between prey that will run and prey that will not, and they acted on it. Automatically, without malice, without even fully understanding what they were doing. They tested you because you were testable. What you are about to receive is not a collection of responses, not a set of comebacks, not a tactical menu for the moment after the disrespect has already landed. What you are about to receive is 5 permanent architectural changes that make disrespect structurally impossible, so deeply embedded in how you carry yourself that the people who used to test you will stop. Not because they respect you yet, because something in your presence has shifted at a frequency they cannot name but cannot ignore. You are not here to react better. You are here to become someone reactions are never required from. Every man who gets disrespected consistently is sending a signal he does not know he is transmitting. Not in the moment of the offense, before it. In the way he moves through rooms, responds to small requests, manages the microtransactions of daily interaction. He has been continuously, invisibly broadcasting a specific frequency that communicates one thing with extraordinary clarity. I can be accessed. Access is the foundation of everything. The question every person around you is perpetually answering, not with thought but with instinct, is whether you are a man who can be reached. Whether your comfort, your emotional state, your need for approval is available for other people to enter and operate. If the answer their instincts return is yes, the disrespect is not a decision. It is the automatic consequence of an open door. The signal is created by the accumulated pattern of small behaviors, the over-explanation that was not required, the apology that preceded the error, the agreement manufactured to keep the temperature comfortable. Collectively, they construct a precise portrait of a man whose interior is available for entry. A man who, with the correct application of social pressure, will adjust. Adjustment is the invitation. The moment someone discovers you adjust under social pressure, that your behavior changes in response to their approval or disapproval, you have handed them a lever they will not consciously decide to use but will instinctively return to. They did not manufacture this lever. You installed it. Through every boundary that softened under their reaction, every version of yourself you modified to maintain their comfort at the expense of your own authority. The first architectural change is an interior decision that produces every behavior afterward. You become unavailable, not cold in the performative sense that still communicates investment, unavailable in the structural sense, the quiet, permanent removal of your interior from the list of things other people have access to. Your emotional state is no longer a public resource. The part of you that monitored their expression for displeasure and immediately calculated how to relieve it, that part has been administratively shut down, not suppressed, decommissioned. When you remove the invitation, the people around you recalibrate. Not respect yet, something quieter and more durable. The recognition at the level beneath language that this particular man is no longer terrain they know how to navigate. The invitation has been revoked. But removing the invitation only closes the door they were already using. What comes next has been granting them entry through a wall you did not know had windows. You have been operating on their schedule. Every time you respond to a provocation within the time frame, it was designed to produce a response in. You confirm something far more damaging than whatever the disrespect itself communicated. There is an implicit timeline embedded in every act of disrespect, a window of expected response. And your reaction, arriving on schedule, confirms one thing with precision. It confirms that they control your clock. The person who responds on demand has surrendered one of the most fundamental expressions of autonomy a human being possesses. Every on-schedule reaction is a confirmation that the mechanism is functional, that the provocateur has successfully inserted themselves into your timeline and produced exactly the result they were applying pressure to generate. The man who cannot be rushed is the man who cannot be managed. When disrespect arrives, you introduce delay, not the visible, effortful delay of a man counting to 10. The organic delay of a man who has continued doing what he was doing because what he was doing was more important than the provocation. You complete the thought. You finish the task. You return to the provocation if you return at all at the time that serves your purposes, not theirs. Remove the timeline. And watch them lose the only clock they knew how to read. But timeline control only governs the exterior. What remains lives at a depth most men are not prepared to excavate, because it requires looking at something they have been looking away from since the first time someone made them feel like their value was negotiable. Disrespect requires a theater. Every act of disrespect is a performance. It requires a stage. It requires witnesses, or the implication of witnesses, or at minimum the internal audience of your own self-perception registering that something has been taken from you. Without a theater, without somewhere for the act to land and produce visible impact, disrespect loses its function. It becomes a sound made in an empty room, and sounds made in empty rooms do not echo. They simply dissolve. The most dangerous theater exists entirely inside you. It is the part of your psychology that watches every disrespect, registers the offense, assigns it weight and meaning, then carries that weight forward as a wound that has not fully closed. This internal theater never closes. It replays the offense, rehearses the response you did not deliver, imagines the confrontation that would finally resolve what the original interaction left unfinished. Every performance it runs is a reminder that the disrespect mattered, that it landed, that it found something inside you worth disturbing. The man who has removed the internal theater cannot be humiliated, not because he is numb, because he has dismantled the mechanism that converts social information into psychological injury. The offense arrives. It is processed clinically, with the cold detachment of a man reading intelligence rather than absorbing an attack, filed as data, and then released, not into the internal theater for repeated performance, but into the same category as every other irrelevant environmental information his mind immediately discards. When you remove your internal audience, the provocateur performs to an audience that does not react. The room watches a man receive something designed to produce visible impact, and produce instead the deeply unsettling quality of a man for whom the impact simply did not arrive, not suppressing it. A man for whom the architecture that converts provocation into injury does not appear to exist. A performer with no theater has no power. The disrespect returns to its source carrying the full weight of its failure to land. But the theater is only one of the structures making you available. The one that has survived every attempt you made to dismantle it has been attacking it from the wrong direction entirely. You have been waiting for a judgment that will never be delivered. Beneath every interaction where you monitored their expression for signs of approval, beneath every explanation you offered for a decision that required none, beneath every moment you softened your position in response to their visible displeasure, there has been a continuous, quiet, exhausting act of waiting. Waiting for someone to confirm that your assessment of your own value is accurate. That the internal verdict you have rendered can be trusted because someone external has confirmed it. This is the deepest mechanism, the one that survives every other change. Because while you build walls and remove timelines and dismantle theaters, this mechanism quietly maintains the one dependency that makes you permanently vulnerable to anyone who understands how to withhold what you are waiting for, their verdict. And a man who needs the verdict to be right before he can trust his own judgment has handed the authority over his psychology to whoever controls the verdict. The surgical removal begins with a single reorientation. You become your own primary evidence. You treat your own direct experience, your tested judgment, your accumulated intelligence, as the primary data source for conclusions about your worth. The source that remains operational regardless of whether anyone in the room approves of what it produces. When you make this shift, verdict withholding loses its function entirely. The cold reaction, the critical response, the conspicuous absence of approval, all of it arrives at a destination that has been administratively closed. The verdict was never theirs to deliver. You simply stopped submitting the application. Somewhere along the way, you accepted a role you did not audition for. Not in a single moment. Through accumulation. Through the slow, almost geological process by which repeated interactions deposit a layer of definition over who you are, until the definition others have been assigning begins to feel indistinguishable from the truth of who you actually are. This is the final mechanism, and it is the most insidious, because the people who disrespect you are not reading your words. They are responding to something they detect at the frequency beneath all of that. The faint, almost subliminal broadcast of a man who has not yet fully inhabited his own authority, who carries within him, alongside everything he has built, the ghost of every definition someone else assigned him that he never fully rejected. They smell it. The human nervous system is extraordinarily precise at detecting the gap between a man's presented self and his inhabited self, between the confidence he performs and the authority he actually occupies. This gap, invisible to conscious observation, unmistakable to instinct, is the signal they have been responding to. The chronic broadcast of a man whose identity has been partially authored by people who were never qualified to hold the pen. The final removal requires you to go back with cold, surgical precision into the accumulated self-concept you have been operating from. To identify the definitions that do not belong to you, the assessments of your value delivered by people operating from their own damage, their need to assign you to a category that served their psychology rather than accurately described your nature. To extract these definitions from the working document of your identity, not to replace them with flattering alternatives, simply to remove what was never accurate and never yours, and then to inhabit what remains. What remains is not a construction. It is what was always there beneath the accumulation, the original, unmodified version of your own authority. When you inhabit this fully, the frequency changes. The broadcast inviting the tests goes silent. The gap between your presented self and your inhabited self closes, and a man whose interior and exterior are operating at the same frequency is not merely harder to disrespect. He is, to the instinct of anyone who encounters him, the wrong target entirely. Remove the identity they assigned you. Occupy the one that was always yours. Do this once, and they will never test you again. 5 removals, not additions, not new behaviors layered over an existing structure. Removals, the precise extraction of the 5 mechanisms that have been broadcasting your availability, to provocation, to manipulation, to the tests of people who identified an open door and walked through it with the confidence of those who have done it before. The invitation is gone. The timeline is yours. The theater has been dismantled. The verdict returned to the only authority qualified to deliver it, and the identity they assigned you extracted from the document of who you are permanently, without ceremony. 99% of the men watching this will feel the weight of what has been delivered. There will be a moment, genuine, unmistakable, where the 5 removals feel within reach. And then, with a consistency that borders on mechanical, they will return to the explanation they promised themselves they would stop offering, to the approval they decided to stop seeking, to the identity assigned to them in rooms where they had no power, carried forward into rooms where they had every power. They will return not because they are weak, because transformation at the interior level requires the daily, private practice of catching yourself in the moment of the old pattern, noticing the internal theater running and shutting down the projector, feeling the pull toward the verdict and returning your orientation inward, inhabiting your authority in the small, invisible moments where no one is watching, because those moments are where the frequency is actually set. The 1% will go silent. They will go to work. They will install these 5 removals as a daily operational practice until the frequency of who they are at the interior level matches, finally and completely, the frequency they have always been capable of transmitting. And the people who used to test them will simply find, the next time they reach for the mechanism that used to work, that the mechanism is gone, and they will move on, to someone still holding the invitation open, to someone still running on their timeline, to someone still performing for the theater, waiting for the verdict, inhabiting the identity assigned to them in rooms where they had no power to refuse it. You will not be there. You will have already left. Subscribe. Not because this channel delivers content, because this channel builds the one thing no external circumstance can provide and no person can take from you once it has been properly constructed. The interior architecture of a man who cannot be reached. The ghost protocol is not a response strategy. It is the operating system of the untestable. The cold work continues.